This is me making some pins for the lock 2's up. Right, what I'm going to start doing, 2's up is a ABUS E60 double-ended Euro. The idea behind this is I make 2 sets of pins, one from stock pins out of the E60 and the other one from pins I've made myself, which will either be used from a CASP pinning kit or an ABUS pinning kit, and I'll shape them. So what I'm starting to do now is take the slightly spooled driver pin, key pin, and I'm going to file it down so it's almost like a torpedo style pin, and I'm going to use a backhoe file to take the meat of it off, if you like, and then I'm going to be switching to a triangular file, needle file. So I'm going to use some sandpaper now just to polish it up. It'll take the rough edges off, any file marks, tool marks, etc. It's almost like a deep mushroom at the moment. Or the start of a torpedo pin. And this is a chuck I'm using that was given to me by a UKLS member, specifically so I could do these pins. And what I usually do here is I usually polish the tips of the pins first, because anything I do on the back end of the pins, if I tapered them or made them sharp serration on the very tip, I have trouble getting the chuck to grip them. So I'm just shaping the edge of the pin. I don't want to alter the length because it'll alter the way the key works. The whole idea of this lock was to use the same key in either end and have it work. This is the first time you'll see me using a piercing saw to make some serrations. This is primarily what I use to make any serrations. Okay, that's one pin down. We'll start with some of the others. With these pins, they're slightly thinner than a standard pin, so I've had to change the collet on it, and as you can see, sometimes I've got to unscrew it to get the pin out. And I'm remembering to do it from the tip of the pin first, the rounded edge. And for those anal enough to wonder, this is either 600 or 1200 grit wet and dry paper I use. In this case it's 1200. Okay, this is the core that they're going to be going into, and if I can get the thing to focus, you'll see that chambers 1, 3 and 4 are threaded, 2, 5 and 6 are undercut. And all I've used is a normal tap to put the threads in and a ball cutter, which I used for the rotor attachment for the Dremel, just to enlarge the hole slightly and put the undercut there. These are the pins. I've already done the drivers at this point, and I'm just starting on the key pins. So the idea is that pin on the right that you see with that ledge and the ledge on its driver's counterpart, I'm hoping that with the undercut they'll catch, they'll trap, they'll give great feedback. These two pins I'm probably going to be swapping around. In fact, while I've dropped that one, I think I will. This is much easier when you use tweezers when you're holding it like this. Because again, on chamber 5 there's an undercut, so I want something with that ledge just to give it some feedback across that when I do the pin. 3 and 4 are going to be serrated, and I'm hoping that I can either use this slight serrated spool on that, and then I'll probably change the order that these pins are actually in, but you'll see a photograph of that later. I'll put that up. And again, what we're aiming to do is just catch them ledges in these slightly enlarged and slightly undercut chambers. I say 1, 3 and 4 are threaded, so they're crying out for serrations. 2, 5 and 6 spools, anything with a ledge on the end that'll just catch slightly, even if it's just to give you a false set. So you'll notice that I haven't fixed the Dremel to the workbench because I'm limited on space, so I do have a tendency to move it around a lot. I never go into making pins with a clear idea of what I'm going to do or how I'm going to make it or anything. What you'll notice with this one is if it focuses enough so it comes out on the video, that it's, when you go up to, I think it's 3 or 4 on the Dremel, it's actually out of kilter, but when you go past that it levels itself back out. The pin I'm actually about to start making here, these are cheap finger files from Screwfix, and what I'm going to do here is make a version of a spool. Again, you'll see any work I do, I try to polish them up so that they haven't got the tool marks or anything on. With this pin, what you'll notice is, although it's a spool of a sort, it's actually a very drunken spool. With that chuck being slightly out of kilter, it's cut more on one edge than on another for some reason. So it will give strange feedback depending on how it'll turn, which will make it an interesting pick. And we'll chuck up another one. And at this point I'm having all sorts of problems with the autofocus on my iPad. Normally I use my phone, but I think at this point it was actually on charge. As I said earlier, I don't have a plan when I make up pins until I touch it with the tools. Sometimes I'll think, yeah, I'll make a serrated, or I'll make one a torpedo type. So we're going to make a serrated one on this one, and a couple of times you'll notice that the saw blade slips off the end. With the piercing saw, I find the hardest part is always starting it off. This is a very fine blade. It's also a pull cut, which is why you see me cut away from the direction of the spin. And I usually do a couple of cuts, or 3 cuts I think in this case, start them off and then deepen them to whichever depth I'm going for on this. And I think on these there was no very, very deep cuts. I actually made this video a couple of weeks ago now, and I've been trying and trying to get it done, and the audio originally was terrible. All you could hear was the noise of the Dremel. So I'm re-recording the audio as I'm watching the video back, and I'm trying to remember what I was doing and where. So what we're doing here, we're going to try and polish inside the serrations, just to tidy them up, and yeah, I really have got OCD that badly that I need to do it. And what I'll do is grab a pair of pinning tweezers even, to grip the pins, and about here I'll figure out that the Sparrow's pinning tweezers just don't cut it. Not for the first time I've dropped a pin. It wasn't even the first time in this video I dropped a pin. And there you go, there's the serrations. Come on, focus. There you go, nice sharp serrations. So this is the core modifications I made and the picture of the pins once they were all finished. So what we're going to do now is populate the chambers, knowing what pins are going where, and then I'll work out which key pins are going to go with which drivers and how they'll work. Sometimes I've done this before now and these pins just do not want to go in. Excuse me. So they've all actually been polished now. They've all been sanded again, and we've gone from 320 up to 1200 grit. Pins 1 and 2 are steel pins, and I did start to have a go at them, but they're not easy to work with the bits I've got. And at this point what I'll do is put the key in, make sure all those are level, and then in the core holder make sure that it turns. If it turns in here, it'll turn in the core when it's back in the Bible, should I say. Yeah, come on, promote it. There you go. Yeah, I'll just give up if I were you, mate. Right. Moving on to the Bible. This is completely stock. There's no modifications been made to any of the chambers. I can't remember at the back end of this if I show this or not, but there's no chamber pins been knocked out. Now this is a start of where I really struggled, hence I've just put the LED lamp on that I got as a UKLS Secret Santa present last year, which had proved invaluable. So Secret Santa, if you're watching, thank you very much, you had it spot on. Again, you'll see me drop pins and springs here, there and everywhere. With these tweezers, every time I go to pop it in, because the springs are so long, I'm catching it and it's just knocking them out, and it provided some entertainment here. Again, you'll see me just dropping springs here, there and everywhere, trying to get them in, knocking them out, dropping them on the floor, they're bouncing. Oh, at this point I'm now looking, thinking, where's it gone? Yeah. Looks like a little searchlight. So now it's check all over the bench, see where they've gone. Can't find it on the bench, start looking on the floor. So what we've done, we've cut away and we're going back now to doing the pins. This is probably 12th or 13th take of doing this totally. I had so many problems. What I'm going to try and do is use a full-size follower and then use the 3 split followers that you get in the HUK or Danu kit. And we'll do it that way. On a normal Euro with normal size pins, I would use a front loader. I think what I might do is have to heat the end of these tweezers up and put them around a small nail and just form them. Use it that way. Make it easier picking these smaller diameter pins up. And we're there. There we go. There's both sides pinned up. I've took both cores out. This is the core that we've just made. And what I'm finding here is there's a slight gap on the bottom of the plug, and it's just nailing that first pin. Sometimes I can force them past, sometimes I can't, so what I'll do is use a shim. I actually bugger more shims up fitting locks back together than I do gutting them. You see me throw one out there because they're just bent up to buggery, some of the shims I've got. And it's not like I haven't got shims. I've actually got a packet of about 30 not far from where I'm sat at the moment, but those were on the workbench that I'd been using for making locks, so that the pins don't drop in, and when you go to pull them out you end up pulling them out sideways or over top of the front of the plug, or just generally bending them up. In all fairness, this is probably we're probably up to about take 15, 16 by now. They're just, if it could go wrong, it went wrong at times on this video. What I'm trying to do is pull that follower out so that I can get to the shim. And like there, I've just turned it slightly and dropped out pin 1. Not for the first time, not even for the first time on this video. Like I said, I don't normally do videos. That's why this one's pretty much as long as it is. And I was having so many problems. So many problems. Again, you see there I've bent the shim. So what we're going to do now is start loading this with the 3 little part followers, I suppose you'd call them, partial followers. When you see me put the key in, it's basically so I get the pins as high as, so that even if I twist by accident, I don't lock the pins in place. Excuse me. And again, as you pop the core back in, you can just pull these out the middle, and you'll see me using a pick to get get the shim to sit up over the core there. In a previous take I did this, pulled that out, and it actually pulled the core out as well. So I just want to test that the key works in both. I've got a spare key for this, so put in 2, make sure they work. Little catches here and there, but it's part and parcel of having the lock as it is. So all we've got to do now really is put circlips on, and this will be going to a friend of mine who has graciously sent me some loan locks from the south of France. So I promised him ages ago I would make him a lock, and this is it. It's 2s up, based on an Abus E60, stock key, stock Bibles and homemade pins. I hope when you get this, Tony, you will have lots of fun with it. Okay, some outtakes. It's actually one outtake. This was one, I just found it funny because of the audio I got on it. So we're up to the part where I'm doing that, and like a total tool, I pulled the follower out, and the pins I just put in went everywhere. Thank you for watching. This is Papa Smith. Bye.